King Charles is making a two-day trip to Canada. It's his first visit to the country as its head of state, and one of the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's big announcements since being elected last month was that he would invite Canada's head of state, King Charles, to visit. But this trip is designed to send a particular message to show British support for Canada amid the trade tensions with the US and repeated suggestions from President Trump that Canada could become the 51st US state. Mr. Carney wants the King to officially open a new session of Parliament and deliver a speech from the throne of Parliament. The King and Queen Camilla accepted the invitation, and correspondents say it is an instance of soft power.
We will have the privilege of welcoming His Majesty King Charles III, who will deliver Canada's speech from the throne on May 27th. Her Majesty the Queen will join this visit. This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
Well, for more on this, let's speak now to the international affairs analyst, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, who joins me on the line from London. Great to see you, Dr. Laskiewicz. So how might King Charles's visit signal Canada's continued deep ties with the UK? I mean, is the King doing Canada a favour here, performing a useful political function as far as Mark Carney is concerned?
Yes, but it's slightly more complicated. Technically, it's not a favour on his part. He actually is the monarch of Canada, and opening Parliament is one of his duties. Usually, of course, delegated to the Governor-General of Canada, but on this particular occasion, he himself will do so. Though without the robes, he'll be doing a suit. That is when he does it in Great Britain. Also, it underlines the fact that Canada does not want to be part of the USA, and therefore it is a very strong political signal. In that sense, moreover, Canadians, as Trudeau said before, define themselves as being not Americans to some degree, and therefore it is most unlikely that President Donald Trump plan would ever work, but this visit simply underlines in a very symbolic and yet peaceful way that Canada does not want to be part of the USA in any shape or form.
And I mean, you did mention that obviously King Charles is the head of state of Canada, but it's a very rare thing, isn't it, to see the British monarch going to Canada to deliver his speech from the throne of Parliament. It's only the third time, from what I understand, that it's happened. I'm imagining that it reflects the King's personal opinion, holding Canada close against the claims of America.
I'm not sure I put it quite like that. Canada has Dominion status and had it from the 19th century. And in Dominion status, it is autonomous, but recognizes King Charles, or the reigning monarch, as its head of state. Therefore, technically, this could happen year in, year out. It does not happen because, on the whole, the Canadians see themselves as an autonomous nation without having to depend on King Charles. A situation, for example, very strongly felt in Australia. However, in these circumstances, he is asked to come over. It is rare, as you say, for the reasons I've stated, but legally, it's always been the case. And I point out the Governor-General is literally not just the Governor-General, the better would be the French term, vice-roi, a viceroy in English, meaning as a deputy to the King. So actually, in that sense, it always has been opened by the British monarch, but simply by a representative, as opposed to by he himself. Donald Trump's probably frustration at this point is actually mirrored in the other Anglo-Saxon nations. Australians, for example, have long asked New Zealand to join them, but New Zealand does not want to. And so a similar scene could be envisaged down south, down under. However, the important thing here is it is a legal ceremony, only this time by the King himself instead of by a representative, which, as you put it, is rare, but is absolutely legally correct.
And Mark Carney, of course, leading a minority government in a country where a lot of young people don't necessarily see the king as progressive. So, I mean, in that regard, it will be revealing to see the range of Canadians who are interested when sort of, well, now that King Charles and Camilla are turning up. I mean, could it all backfire, perhaps?
That's a very interesting point. The question is, how close are the Canadians to being like Australians? Actually, had Donald Trump never ever mentioned that he wanted Canada to be the 51st state, or at least would offer this opportunity to them, whether by coercion or not, I honestly doubt that King Charles would have opened any parliament during his reign in Canada. As you put it, many young Canadians really don't see themselves as having a monarch in charge. And so therefore, paradoxically, what Donald Trump has done is actually strengthened the ties suddenly between Great Britain and Canada, and especially that King Charles is here to lend a helping hand in much the same way that Russia invading Ukraine has made Finland and Sweden join NATO. It, so to speak, is a move that's backfired against Donald Trump, and coincidentally may bring about much better, very good relations between Canada and Great Britain, which were always there, but now including, of course, the monarch, who otherwise, I feel you would be correct, would have been at least a marginal figure, shall we put it like this?
But I mean, I don't know whether this is difficult from an international affairs analyst perspective, but I mean, are there lots of people with a kind of Republican outlook who think that it is time to abandon all this sort of monarchy stuff? And I apologize if you've already answered this, because I missed a bit of what you said, although the audience heard you clearly. Or is it hard to know because it isn't something that most people have really thought through?
No, there undoubtedly is some Republican sentiment in Canada, unquestionably. Probably especially strong amongst the French, who after all would prefer to be with France, the Quebecans. However, it is not as strong as in Australia, and please note Australia still is a Dominion status and still is part of the Commonwealth. Canada is less, and therefore I do not envisage this visit by King Charles III backfiring in any shape or form. What is true is it's in some ways some Canadians will see it quaint, others may be annoyed because the Republicans. On the other hand, the threat of Donald Trump and what he may or may not do is very real. The possibility that King Charles III is going to rule Canada by a diktat is zero. So I imagine that on the whole, he'll be pleasantly welcomed. He himself is a very diplomatic man, so he won't step on any toes. And the whole thing will be a great boost to Great Britain, Canada, and actually the standing of the monarchy in that respect.
You mentioned the French-speaking Quebec there. I mean, we've seen both the Quebecois at the federal and the provincial level often expressing displeasure at the idea of the monarchy and suggesting that it is not reflective of the feelings of many people in Quebec. So to that extent, I mean, you have a point there. But the US ambassador has said there are easier ways of sending a message than bringing the king over. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of reaction there'll be in Washington, won't it?
Yes, because King Charles III actually has, so to speak, a dual role, which is there's a certain conflict of interest. Qua British monarch, there's been a trade agreement with America, and please remember that Donald Trump is the head of state, of course, of USA, so he's in effect signing treaties with King Charles III there. Simultaneously, King Charles III is the monarch of Canada and is now here coming over to show, as you like, his displeasure at what the Americans are doing. And this conflict of interest would be very difficult to ride out, but not impossible because, first and foremost, he's a very diplomatic man, the king, so I imagine he won't step on anyone's toes, including Americans. Number two, President Donald Trump has more things on his plate than just Canada, and it's not of primary importance as far as one can tell. He doesn't mention it all that often. Number three, there will be some sort of agreement eventually with Canada about the tariffs, and therefore, and as you can see, there are constant negotiations. So it's not really a life or death situation. So I don't think it will be a problem. Moreover, the American comment that is easier ways of sending a symbol, actually, no. This is one of the strongest symbols, peaceful symbols that Canada could make. And it is of immense importance because, of course, America was the one that rebelled against the British king. And that therefore, in this sense, by showing that there's still a British king there, it emphasizes the difference between the two countries at fundamental level for over 2 centuries. And therefore, as such, it implies quite clearly that there's no way that Canada is going to be part of USA.
Indeed, but certainly it sounds from just hearing you talk about all this like lots of eyes will be on the throne in Parliament as the King's speech is delivered on Tuesday, and I imagine that that will please Mark Carney.
We've remembered he was the Bank of England governor here, so he knows the King and the British situation extremely well, and therefore this is, if you like, a continuation for him. It's by no means a stranger who's turning up. The fact that he has already, please note, minor point but important, the King will not be in full fig. He won't be wearing robes and a crown. He's going to be wearing a suit. And this is very much not to throw, how can I put it, throw it in your face, as the expression goes, his kingliness or his monarchy, but simply there as a responsible head of state. And in that respect, they've done very well on that one. So yes, eyes will be on King Charles, but his script will be written for him in many ways, of course, because it's the program of the Canadian government, just as it does in Great Britain. And therefore, from that point of view, I do not expect there to be any problems at all.
Dr. Laskiewicz, I want to thank you very much indeed. The range of your analysis never ceases to impress. Dr. Marek Laskiewicz is the International Affairs Analyst. He was talking to me on the line there from London.